Hello, everybody. Welcome to the October 23rd meeting of the Southborough Historical Commission. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m., noting that Jim Bloschke is not with us tonight, but present are myself, Kevin Miller, Annie Pfaff, Grant Farrington, Michelle Hokinson, and our newest member, Mr. Dan Blanchard, who, of course, was with us during that joint meeting with ShopC and Rec and Open Space and CPC last week, but we didn't really get to give him a proper welcome. And I want to do so because I'm absolutely delighted. When Jim is here, brings us up to 6, and I think we're pretty close, pending tomorrow night's select board meeting, to having a full house on historical, which is really exciting because we've got a lot of things ahead of us and could really use the people power. So welcome, Dan. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have anything you want to say, you're on mute.
I am excited. And so after some dabbling and with Grant with the St. Mark's, that horrible long name of a committee,
Street Park Working Group.
Yeah. So this has been good. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we are too, and of course, as everybody I think knows, Dan is the responsible party as to why I have a enormous box neatly packed away and hopefully sorted out and safe, pending disposition in all likelihood with the Historical Society in terms of all the artifacts that Dan recovered in his walks over in the new park area. And so I hope that we can prevail upon him to sort of take a lead role in making sure that stuff finds a good home and is, at some point, hopefully when the Fayetteville Hall project gets complete, to see that stuff displayed and to tell the story, because it's a really interesting one. Anyway, thanks. I'm delighted and welcome. I'm gonna first, is there any public comment before we move on to our third item already? Going once, going twice. Okay. Sally, I'm going to promote you to panelist, doing so right now. Okay, you're with us, Sally. And just to remind people where we're at on this, and sort of sets the table for Dan too. There was, it's a kind of a long story, Dan, but there's been a lot of discussion about the status of the old burial ground. There was a lot of conversation about the flags that are flown there, and a lot of back and forth, and the select board formulating a policy to deal with that because they had issues with the Shurtleff Supreme Court decision sort of casting a certain shadow. That part of it has been resolved. There's a policy in place, and but running on a parallel track with that was a feeling about better commemorating the Revolutionary War veterans in the OBG, in particular those in unmarked graves, because as I'm sure everybody's familiar with, the Southborough has a particular issue. I'm sure there's this is a thing in other communities, but here in Southborough it really is a big deal, largely, and Sally can offer corrections when I make a mistake, but it seems like largely because of the hurricane in 1938 and how it really decimated the old burial ground and how many graves stones were lost. And so, in Southborough, and the other issue with the old burial ground in Southborough is that our Revolutionary War graves are quite centralized, as opposed to some other communities where they're spread out in a number of burying places. In Southborough, they are apparently all central to the old burial ground. That's number one. And then number two, we lost so many of the markers in the hurricane of 38, where they were destroyed, and they're trying to rebuild the community, not so much worried about the markers for the dead. And a lot of those got plowed under or buried or used for other purposes. And so we lost a lot of those markers. And so there was a concern for doing justice and a proper honoring of in particular the unmarked veterans. Well, as that conversation was sort of going along and the select board was working to figure out what they wanted to do about it, I was approached or contacted by a gentleman from the Massachusetts Sons of the American Revolution, named Joseph Gautier. And he indicated that they have a program that was initiated by him in Massachusetts, and they had funding for this, where they're trying to put up at various burial sites that have Revolutionary graves markers, bronze plaques on a pole, to commemorate Revolutionary War veterans, to sort of list them out. And in the fairly short time he's had this program running, it's been very successful and very well received. Oh wait, there's I just want to make sure we have someone with their hand up, so I just want to check in here. Jerry, go ahead.
I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jerry. I like the color red. Yeah.
Okay, Jerry, you're muted. So to continue, having been contacted by Mr. Gautier, he indicated that they've done this marking in some other communities around. One of them is, okay, we got some pranksters in the attendees, and we're going to ignore them. Most notably in Marlborough, where in the common burial ground right next to the town library, there is a one of these plaques, and it's really quite nice. It looks great. The MASAR, again, this is the acronym for Massachusetts Sons of the American Revolution, sends out a kind of color guard and reenactors, and they fire off muskets and do the whole thing, and they do a really nice job at it. And there was a nice coverage on the Marlborough dedication last fall, with coverage in the Community Advocate that I had forwarded to the select board, and just to give them an idea of what MASAR does and how they do it. So the select board was very supportive of the proposal to do this in Southborough. I was very supportive and very excited about it. And in the last month or so, we were approved to do this. And so we're going to move forward. Sally, in the meantime, was working with us to try to, do research and clarify what's going on with veterans in the old burial ground. So when this proposal came up from Massar, I asked her to sort of redirect her attention to specifically to coming up with a list of who the marked graves, what we had in terms of marked graves and what we had in terms of unmarked graves. Sorry, I've got to hang on. Yeah, sorry about that. I was being thrown off by somebody, the prankster friend of the first prankster, repeatedly raising and lowering his hand and making the whole thing in the attendees list go haywire. So I have removed the 3 teen pranksters from the meeting. Sorry, it was quite distracting for a moment. Anyway, so that's where we're at. Sally's been working on this for what, about a month and a half now, or 2 months, has done great work. In the stuff I sent out to you later today, that, it gives you an idea of the sources that she's used, the Southborough Soldiers in the War of the Revolution, which was the starting point. And that was the document that originally, when we talked about this project, Sally was going to work to sort of revise and update. Is that correct, Sally? Right. And then, Massachusetts Soldiers and Sailors in the American Revolution, the Southborough Town Records, and she's worked with folks in the clerk's office, material from the New England Genealogical Society, town records, military records, ancestry, family search, DAR, genealogy records, fences of stone, and historical sketches concerning the town of Southborough, Mass. By Deacon Peter Fay. So a pretty extensive sourcing has been done by Sally. And so what I wanted to do tonight was to begin to review this research and see how far we can get, and see if we can come up with, because what we need, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of seem a little scattered in my comments. We've got at this point a list of 37 marked graves and some 43 unmarked graves. And then Sally's got this a kind of third page, as I printed it out, as a Word document, with marked graves with flags, but with issues, and unmarked graves with issues. And so we need to sort through this, come up with a good list, so we can get Mr. Gautier at Massar sort of in business, because it takes a long time for these plaques to be sort of manufactured. One other point is, when this came up originally, and when I talked to the select board about it, I indicated that I was very, very eager to have the Veterans Graves agent in town be a partner with us, and that I was, hope to get his input and opinion and guidance, and whatever he could offer us with regard to the lists that we're trying to refine, with regard to placement of this sign when it eventually comes, with regard to sort of every aspect of it and every point that he had to make. I know Sally has reached out a couple of times. I also emailed Mr. Wynot early in October, when Sally indicated to me that she was ready and had material to share and to discuss. And I also called Mr. Wynot on the 20th and left a message. My email was back on the 9th. and I tried to follow up on Friday, but I have yet to hear from him, and he may be, I don't know, traveling or indisposed otherwise. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get some response and some input from that end. But meanwhile, I think it's important for us to go forward and again begin sort of reviewing the information. So, Sally, can you unmute? Because we'd love to start working on this. Is that clear? And I'm sorry, I really the nonsense that was going on in the gallery there for a couple of minutes was quite. I haven't really had that before. I know other boards and committees have had the visits of the pranksters. But anyway, so
Kevin,
yeah,
just before we get into it, for the documents that you sent out, are all three of the new ones that you sent out today the ones that we should be referring to? Do they replace the other three from previously, or are they mixed?
Sally, how much altered is what you sent late this afternoon from what I had sent yesterday?
There are just a couple of alterations. I did finally find one of the graves when I went again that I had been missing. And I also realized that I had left off of the marked graves, the gravestone list, I had left out David Gardner, and I wanted to make sure he was in there.
So, okay, so
okay.
So we should refer to the ones from today.
Yeah, today's are the up-to-date ones. I'm sorry, but I keep on looking and looking because I just live in dread fear of leaving somebody out that should not, be left out. And that's why I kept, that I did try to contact Steve Wynot several times. So if he could share his list of who he puts the flags on. And I did finally hear from him via Al Hamilton that he says he does not have a list, that he just puts them where the markers are, so I went and I made my own list, which is one of the ones that I sent you. And there are markers for the War of 1812 and for the earlier colonial wars, and then for the Revolution. So that's one of the lists that I sent you. And the only one that I could not find was David Gardner's grave today when I was trying to locate it. Some of the stones are extremely difficult to read, so oops.
You just went back on mute, Sally.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Am I back in?
Yes.
Okay. So some of the stones are extremely difficult to read. So when we're talking about, should the plaque only have the names of the unmarked graves, or the names of also include the names of the marked graves, I would recommend including the marked graves, because at some point, some of those names are going to be totally illegible. And so to continue to recognize them. Kevin had mentioned the fact that we have the unique situation of having a huge area with no stones because of the hurricane of 1938 and all of the damage it did. And that really was brought home to me yesterday afternoon when I was at the old burial ground in Framingham for a program they were presenting, which I think is something that we should consider doing for the tricentennial. But anyway, that's another topic. Because that graveyard did not have any, huge areas where there were no graves. It was just almost completely full of gravestones. So anyway, I have come up with a list of 37 gravestones that are marked with flags at the present time. Actually, those are the 37 I'm comfortable with, because there are a couple that I if you look on the marked graves with flags, but with issues, if you have that section, there are some that have flags, and I'm not sure why they have flags. For Alpheus Fay, for example, has a flag, but there is absolutely nothing in the town records. What Jeremy has done, the archivist, the town has tons and tons of little scraps of paper that are from the colonial and the Revolutionary era of people asking for pay for various things. And he has archived all of these, and I have the index to all of that has been archived, and there is absolutely nothing in there from Alpheus Fay or about Alpheus Fay having served at all. So why he gets that flag is a mystery to me.
Well, you wouldn't, and Sally, can I just jump in for a second, not to throw you off your game? To go backwards for 1 second. So on the first page, you have a list of 37 marked graves, right?
Yeah, but I did not include the ones that I was uncomfortable with.
Right, right. I understand. These are the ones, this first page, as I understand it, with the 37. These are ones that we are rock solid about. Is that fair characterization?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so that we're solid on that. And then I'm just kind of table setting in a certain way.
Okay.
And then on the second page, you had a list of 43 unmarked graves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm correct, I think, in saying that you're also content and satisfied that those 43 did indeed serve during the Revolutionary War.
Yes.
Great. So really what we're talking about are the ones on your third page, which you just started to talk about with Alpheus Fay. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 marked graves with flags, but with issues that you started to describe. And then 2 unmarked graves were in the record, but with issues.
Yes.
Correct? Okay, great.
Yes.
So
thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and I just think it's kind of gives people some encouragement that in fact 80 of these separated into those 2 categories, marked and unmarked, we feel like there's clarity on, and it's really just this, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people.
Yep.
At this point that were, that you, so for instance, you started now with this Alpheus Fay. This is one, just so I'm clear, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of I'm bringing it down to my level. Alpheus Fay is the first of 7 people that you're indicating. For instance, Mr. Wynot is currently, when he places his flags in the spring, is placing a flag because there's not necessarily because he has it on a list, but because there's a marker there for whatever reason. But you're indicating that, for instance, with Alpheus, it's Alpheus, by the way, that there's nothing in the Southport Town records about military service, and he's not in mass soldiers and sailors, right?
Correct. And I could find nothing about him on fold 3. I searched a lot of places for him, couldn't find anything.
What do you recall? You don't have it here, or is it illegible? Are his dates, birth, death? Obviously, he may have served and not likely not killed in combat.
Kevin, while she's doing that, just wanted to clarify so thanks for going through the document for the different categories. But the Excel spreadsheet I'm confused about. So that is how does that relate to all of it? Or are we just looking at the Word document?
I think the Word document provides greater clarity.
Okay, because I saw
although-
that the numbers were different. One was 80 and one was 40, so I was just not
Right.
sure.
Right. I think well, I think we should cross-reference those things. But for instance, Sally has on here, for example, at the top of the Excel spreadsheet, Eliza Brigham, who she indicates as service in the War of 1812. So doesn't.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But does appear on that's something we need to cross-reference.
It's called a flag list. So is that when you're referring to flags, is that ones that the Graves officer flies flags on currently? Is that what we're referring to?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, for instance, Sally, that Elijah Brigham, it looks from the Excel spreadsheet, did service in the War of 1812
Correct.
and died in 1861, but is currently, it's a marked grave with a headstone, but it is being, and it carries the veterans holder and the flag.
But the holder says War of 1812.
Okay, but so for instance, Elijah Brigham appears on the Revolutionary War veterans Word document list. I think that's where Grant and I have some confusion.
He does.
Does he? Oh, he does. Good catch, Kevin.
Yeah, he does.
I was just asking a general question, but about the
Just,
spreadsheet, which I
yeah,
think,
well,
yeah.
I just happened to-
that's interesting because, just one second. That's because there are two Elijah Brighams.
Ah, there
One
you go.
served in the Revolution, one served in the War of 1812.
Good answer.
Ah, okay, good. All right. So, and I'm sorry if I didn't mean to throw you off your game, Sally. So back on so we've got what we feel is a pretty good list of the marked graves, 37, unmarked graves, 43. And so now we're just looking for the moment at this issue of marked graves with flags, but with issues, right? And so
Mhm.
you said that Alpheus Fay, there's nothing in the town records about military service and not in mass soldiers and sailors. But again, just to clarify, this is somebody who currently has a marker.
Okay, and this is where if Steve did have a list and I could compare, it would be a lot easier because maybe he served in the War of 1812 and I didn't notice that on the marker. Walking around and trying to look at all those markers, they're in no particular order, and it's possible I just misread it. So maybe I'm going to go. He was born in 1867, 1767, excuse me, which would make him just a little young, but not impossible for the Revolution, toward the very end of it. Because I have found 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds that did serve during the Revolution. So it's possible, but I don't think he should be put on the plaque, would be my feeling, but I don't want to make that decision by myself.
Yeah, what are Grant, Michelle, Dan, what's your thought on this? I mean, we're kind of really in a pickle. It appears, in other words, that the Veterans Grave agent doesn't have a list. It's just going by, the fact that there's this the holder for the flag there. We're trying to make a decision about, names that are, this is this is bronze and it's permanent. And what Sally's saying, for instance, about the first name on this list is that there's no record of this person having served.
One thing I've been thinking about, I don't know if this is maybe the answer that you are looking for. But I've been thinking about, I think I might have mentioned it at our previous meeting, what do we do if we find out more information about some of these people? This is a cast bronze plaque that can't be altered. So we really have to be sure about, everybody who goes on it. And so I was thinking, that maybe there's a different way that we could, like a different material that we could do this in. So I was thinking about like, what do you do with an active war, for example, to memorialize, soldiers who came home recently. And I think that's more like an etching, like etched names in a wall, like the Vietnam Wall in DC, for example, in which the name, you can add names as they come up.
Right, which has been done with the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, with, names have been added, but this is, this is.
So I know it's weird because, like, obviously we shouldn't be adding names because it happened a long time ago, but there is kind of this element of uncertainty and, more obviously Sally's done a lot of research, but I just think that maybe we should keep it that open in the back of our minds that, this is kind of like an ongoing project that we might find more information about. And we might want to alter the material to be able to edit it later or engrave another name later or something.
Yeah, I think the problem, of course, is that this is, supposed to be a bronze plaque, and the lettering is raised and it's cast, and there's no, as you said originally, there's no altering it once it's done. It is what it is. And so, the good news on this one, for this initial list of 7 names, is that they're already marked graves. And if I can just go into a sidetrack for just briefly, Sally and I have already had a kind of passing conversation about this, but here's the dissonance that we have with this. The project that Massar does as a general rule is that they put up a plaque, it says Revolutionary War veterans, of, let's say, Marlborough, in the Marlborough plaque, and it lists the people who are known to be there, right? It doesn't make a differentiation between marked and unmarked graves, for example, right? Because in Southborough, and going back to the conversations of months and months ago about this issue, and Al Hamilton's initiative at the select board, the conversation really wasn't about marked graves. It was strictly about unmarked graves, because we were known to have them in such profusion, right? So I think, Sally's concern at one point to me was, this is going to be so many names, how are we even going to get them on a single plaque? And, should it be a double-sided thing? Should you differentiate? Do you list them all, and do you have an asterisk marking the unmarked graves? Or do you simply, and I would have to talk to, convince Mr. Gautier that this is a good and viable solution, that we simply erected a plaque only to the unmarked graves because they're not marked. You follow what I'm saying? And this kind of dovetails with the fact that I've had conversations with select board members, and I know they have it on their agenda tomorrow night, to take up a broad range of issues around the town common and in the old burial ground, and to the impulse, as I understand it, is to actively have the participation and guidance of the historical commission, happily, in getting this stuff done. So, for instance, some of the marked graves that Sally talks about as being trending toward illegibility, that a project of preservation and restoration of those stones would, of course, remedy that. You follow what I'm saying? So I think we've got this list of 80 plus names, roughly divided between marked and unmarked. Maybe what ultimately happens here, and would go back to first principles, what the original impulse was a bronze marker listing only those unmarked graves. Does that make sense? Because we have a problem. I mean, and I don't think we're there yet, and we'd have to think about it. We'd also have to, I'd have to talk to the Massar folks. But I don't think that's necessarily an unreasonable path if it comes to it. Michelle, I'm sorry, you've had your hand up.
Yes, so my question is the following. What is the timeline on this? And, if we need to do some more research, although it sounds like Sally has combed through everything that's available. And at some point, if you find that we did leave somebody off of this plaque, what would the cost to replace the plaque? What is the cost that you're talking about of the plaque? I mean, could you read
it's several $1,000s, and I don't even want to contemplate that, because I want to get it right the first time. So in terms of timing, it's flexible. I think, obviously, I think the select board would be pleased. I would be pleased. We would all be pleased if we could do it as expeditiously as possible. There's a production time of several months. I mean, I think there was some hope that, to have, some dedication next spring. Whether that's possible or not, it's all going to depend on how quickly we can nail down our facts.
I also agree with Sally that you should include those marked graves as well, because like she said, they will eventually wear out. And you're talking about doing some sort of restoration, so that it doesn't. So it makes sense, I think, to put all of the veterans on one.
Yeah, it may take a double-sided, part of the reason I didn't go to Mr. Gautier with this dilemma just yet. So for instance, I'll give you an example. The Marlborough plaque, as I recall, has roughly, I want to say 27 names, certainly not 80 plus, right? So to get them all on there, it might take a double-sided piece. It's a lot more expensive. Or some, it's a challenge, right? What they're putting up now, and I had mentioned this to the select board, is not unlike what we have for the National Register District. Those beautiful bronze, that signage is, those are 24 by 30, 24 wide and 30 inches tall. The Massar signs are roughly those same dimensions, although they orient them. Ours are oriented horizontally, and the Massar Revolutionary plaques are horizontal, oriented horizontally. Ours are oriented vertically. But it's a challenge in my mind to see how you would get that many names on this thing without it being either immense or possibly double-sided, if they're willing to, I think Southborough in a way is, and this particular location is a special case. But Sally, sorry, we've kind of gone far afield. To bring this back to just the first one, Alpheus Fay, we got nothing in town records. We have a birth date that suggests that's problematic or a little bit challenging. And we have no record in mass soldiers and sailors. The only thing we have that suggests that Alpheus Fay may have been a Revolutionary War veteran is the fact that there's the bronze holder, right? And that this individual gets a flag, stuck in the holder every year. But we can't ascertain why there's a holder on this grave,
Mhm. Yep.
right? That's basic. So I don't know. I mean, Dan, do you have any thoughts? Like, how do you proceed in a case like this?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
I did find out that he has a twin. He was born a twin. Alpheus Faye. And he has alternate spellings as well, where it's just Alphus. So the entire concept of a monument, where they're not permanent. And as much as we want to make them permanent, they're not. And they come and go. And I think you have to work with what we know now. And so I think if we have the credible sources and we have cross-checked and verified sources, and we know who did serve, then those are the names that should go on the plaque. And there may be new information later, years from now. But if we're not finding the information now, we're not going to find the information probably at all. So,
Yeah, I tend to agree. So,
and I would also say that we don't know how the markers got there, right? And so I think it is disingenuous to leave the markers there on people who do not deserve to have the markers. Now,
well, that's where I think, I think we should settle our list, but it's going to have to possibly, the request of the select board directly to the Veterans Graves agent to have, obviously I have no intention of going forward without that input. I would like to think that I have a hunch that someone in that position would be, very much interested in the most accurate information that we can provide, because, you don't want to give out that honor haphazardly. So,
right, he's listed in Worcester in 1779 for guardianship.
He is Josiah, who died, son.
Yep.
Yep.
So, I mean, he's certainly a Southborough resident, but, looking at his will, there's no mention of pension. There's no mention of that, so, again, I go with what is certain.
yeah.
Right. And so, yeah.
Well, that sounds like we can, put each of these to a vote. I think maybe it would be better to run through the rest of them as quickly as you can and try to come to a kind of consensus on the group. Yeah, Grant.
Yeah, so I just wanted to maybe clarify with Sally. So on this list of the 9 that are marked graves and unmarked graves with issues,
Mhm.
are all of the issues, or are all these people that you don't think or are you just uncertain and that they might be or they might not be? Like, are these, however many there are, 9 or 10, the ones that you separated out to say they should not be on it, or you're just not sure?
Well, for example, Nathan Newton should definitely be on the plaque. My only argument here is, and maybe it's a method of at least recognizing Nathan Newton. The grave that has a gravestone is for a 4-year-old boy. The veteran is in an unmarked grave.
And
So
that would be Nathan Newton, Nathan Newton. I can't even,
Nathan Newton Jr.
Junior.
yes. So, I don't know. I haven't done the family tree. I probably did at some point, but I can't pull it up off the top of my head.
Sure.
So, I mean, perhaps putting a flag there was a way of recognizing the veteran, but it doesn't really belong at that gravestone. I'm not going to really argue about that one because the name does belong on the plaque.
So
Nathan Newton Jr. is in an unmarked grave.
So
The
just
veteran.
clarity,
So-
the Newton, the Nathan Newton boy age 4 would have been probably Nathan Newton the third. In other words, son of Junior.
Not, I don't know right now.
Hmm.
It's,
I guess what I was getting at is, so Dan was saying we should only put the names that we're certain about. So we are certain about the 37 plus the 43.
yes.
And then, so I guess what I was trying to ask, so for Alpheus Fay, Thomas Hudson, Isaac Johnson, Elijah Newton, Nathan Newton, Abner Parker, Ezra Taylor, John Fay, and Ebenezer Richards, at the current moment, these are people that you don't think should be on the plaque, or you just don't know and require more research, or a mix?
Just take Nathan Newton out of the equation right
Okay.
now. Just take him out because his name belongs on the plaque, but
Sure.
the flag is at the wrong spot because there is no marker for Nathan Newton. So anyway, I shouldn't have complicated things there, but
No, that's fine.
a 4-year-old is getting the flag is my point. The others, I don't think they did serve militarily during the Revolution.
Okay.
For example, Isaac Johnson did a tremendous amount as a civic leader, but if you read through what I found, his son died before the Revolution. So the guy who actually served is his grandson. But I did more research and found that the grandson is actually buried in Vermont. So he is not in the old burial ground.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
But somebody just saw the name at some point, I think, Isaac Johnson, and, put the flag there. So
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 are
can
there
we-
any that you are not 100% certain on, but think might have served? Or are all of these people on this issues list people that you don't think served? Other than Nathan Newton.
well, let's see. Thomas Hudson is a bit of a problem. There are 12 Thomas Hudsons in the Massachusetts soldiers and sailors, but none of them has anything to do with Southborough. And the guy was born in 1704. He did pay a fine for not going when he was, if he's the one that was called up. So,
Mhm.
I mean,
In his 70s, right, or 80s, and
yeah, he was in his 70s at the time.
right.
So
Yeah, so to me, that's an easy one to take to strike as well. I think the quick way to do this is say Alpheus Fay out, Thomas Hudson out, Isaac Johnson out for the reasons you've explained. You went through that one, right?
Yep.
Elijah Newton, no record of military service other than a fine. There are 4 in, what's the MSS there?
Massachusetts Soldiers and Sailors.
But none with a Southborough Marlborough connection. But we did,
I think one was from Ipswich, one was from somewhere in Western Massachusetts. They were
Right.
nowhere near here.
right. And you note that, you know, for instance, there are a whole bunch of Newtons on the list. There in the marked graves, Ezra, Gideon, Jabez, Josiah, Seth, and Silas Newton. In unmarked graves, Ebenezer, Gideon, Isaac, Isaac Jr., Lemuel, Moses, and Nathan Newton. And so all you're saying is this one, because you have no records whatsoever, would appear to be out.
Just a quick question. So when you say they have no connection to Southborough, is it possible that, let's just say that they lived in Ipswich but are somehow buried in Southborough?
Well,
Or is
Elijah
it
was
just-
born, he was born in Southborough. He died in Southborough. His children were in, you know, so I mean, for example, Barzillai Bannister was from Western Massachusetts, ended up buried here, so
Okay.
and he did serve. So yes, gets flagged. It's not that they had to serve from Southborough
Yeah.
or Marlborough or whatever, but that they
I was just curious about the one that you said had no connection and that there were 4 from other, or
Yep.
Elijah Newton, I guess, that would be. So even though they might have grew up in Ipswich, is it possible that they are somehow buried here, or that's just
But
unlikely?
this Elijah Newton was born in Southborough and grew up in Southborough and married in Southborough at the age of 62 to his 22-year-old cousin. But anyway,
Oh, that's the one with 2 Elijah Newtons, because this one says no Southborough Marlborough connection.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, thank you.
You have Abner Parker, marked grave, signed non-importation agreement. What explain that? Can you, Sally?
oh, well, I mean, if you go through all of these papers from the time period, a whole bunch of people signed the non-importation agreement. So, I mean, that's where he is cited as having signed that. But so did about 40 other people, you know, that you would not buy any goods from England following.
And again, no record of military service and nothing in mass soldiers and sailors.
Right.
I mean, that would seem for me an out. And then lastly, the marked graves with flags, but with issues. Ezra Taylor, as you note, a civic leadership, was a selectman, but no record of military service. And that would be for me an out as well. I think, I guess maybe let's do these other 2. Unmarked graves with issues, which seemed to even easier. John Fay, military records probably all apply to his son, John Fay Jr. John Fay is cited for lots of civic service, but again, no military record.
Well, it's really hard with John Fay because some of the records say John Fay and some say John Fay Jr., but considering John Fay's senior's age, in all probability, they were referring to Junior the whole time, because sometimes the records put the Junior in and sometimes they didn't.
And is John Fay Jr. is not on either of these lists?
No,
Mark?
he did not get buried in Southborough.
Okay. Yeah, that's an easy one for me also. And then Ebenezer Richards on 1774 militia list on WPA vet cards with the wrong death date. No other record of military service.
So the militia list would imply that they were prepared for military service but didn't actually serve. Is that what that means?
Well, Peter Fay had this list of that from his grandfather, Josiah Fay, of people that in November of 1774 were on the militia list. But apparently he did not actually serve during the war itself.
Here's a suggestion. Again, and anybody that feels otherwise, please let me indicate. It seems to me that Sally makes a pretty clear case for the 1, 2, 3, 4, leaving out Nathan Newton, whose name is going to go on this regardless, right? That's the whole issue with the 4-year-old and the it's Nathan Jr. that really, so leaving that one out. Alpheus Fay, Thomas Hudson, Isaac Johnson, Elijah Newton, Abner Parkner, Ezra Taylor, John Fay, and Ebenezer Richards, to my mind, are all out. Because there's absolutely, from the pretty exhaustive research Sally has done, this doesn't appear to be any documentary support for their inclusion. What that leaves us with is a list of 80 names, 37 marked, 43 unmarked. But my comfort level is really not going to be there until, I mean, again, I would think that you know, Mr. Wynot would kind of be happy to clarify this list, and so that there's that, you know, there's not people honored in this manner that shouldn't be. You know, I think that kind of honor should be sort of closely vetted. But I really defer. For instance, if he felt, this is just my own feeling, I'd love to know what you guys think. Personally, if he said, I gotta have those 9 on there, you know, I'm not sure how I'd feel about it. Because my impulse is to defer, but I don't want to, you know, I also think that we have a stewardship responsibility to be accurate brokers of information. So
He probably would not care about John Fay or Ebenezer Richards because
Right.
he's not aware of them. It's the
right,
the others.
it's
that
this
have,
right. It's there's a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people basically that Mr. Wynot is currently marking, but that based on Sally's research don't appear to be candidates to be listed on this plaque. Any thoughts on how to? My impulse is to, if you all are in agreement with that, to sort of collate this information, send the list, the ones that Sally's sure about marked, sure about unmarked, and then along with this, you know, this list of the ones with the issues and why we feel this way, or why Sally feels this way. And I'm hearing, I think, concurrence here. That's where we're at the moment. I can reach out to Mass Historical too for their guidance on this, if they have any. But I'm a little bit at sea, because to me it's pretty clear. But do any of you have suggestions of what, if there's any further vetting that you think is called for, or should we send the list to Mr. Wynot and you know, implore him to take a look? Or do you want to take this to the select board?
I would, I don't feel very strongly either way, but I do think that we should probably reach out to Mass Historical. I think that's just a wise thing. I don't see any particular rush, so I would want to make sure that we are rock solid on this. And if Mass Historical has a resource that Sally hasn't, wasn't able to find, or, some other archive that, we didn't have access to that might have other names or something like that, then I would probably want to, or even just advice on how to approach a topic like this. There's lots of cemeteries in the state that they've probably dealt with. So I think that would be a good step.
I mean, even using the National Park Service, just to see what they have. But I mean, Massachusetts Soldiers and Sailors is a pretty definitive. It's a pretty definitive book, a compilation of records. And I mean, that in and of itself is at least for me, is a benchmark of as a source. And everything that I've encountered suggests that the old burial ground, after all of the storm damage, it was not particularly well taken care of immediately following the storm. Right? So it's not as though there was this actual process of restoration of the cemetery after the storm. Right? And so you're dealing with flotsam and jetsam, and you're dealing with probably some guesswork. So it would not surprise me if there are markers all over the place that shouldn't be there.
Oh, I'm not saying that all the markers are correct. I'm just saying,
no. Yeah,
it can't hurt to go to the state just to say, you've probably done this 100 times. What are we missing?
Yeah.
Or is this the right way to do it?
Yeah.
Well,
I agree with Grant in that. I would say that Mass Historic, and then I'm pretty sure there's a national database that national parks have access to, and with Lexington and Concord right close by. I think that might be a good place to look to, because not to suggest that there are discrepancies between Continental Army records and state records, but that would not surprise me if that's the case.
Well, can I make a proposal that I think might move this along? Is Grant, would you be willing to work with Sally to draft a letter to Mass Historical, asking them simply what they make of this, and if they have any further suggestions? And are we missing something? Are they, can they offer an opinion? And it would be just based on, you've got one list of marked graves, you've got one list of unmarked graves, you've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people we want to eliminate, and we want to feel comfortable that Sally has done a stellar job on all this research, and do they have they had any other cases like this, or just, are we missing something?
Yeah, I was thinking more of like an informal, just reaching out about resources and how you would approach it. But if you think a letter is the right way,
well, I don't think a formal letter. I think if you're willing to make send a couple of emails or make calls, it depends on who you're trying to reach over there, the difficulty of getting a reply.
Okay.
But I can let you know who I've been in touch with.
Sure.
And maybe we can get some help. And Dan, if you mentioned the Park Service and some other thoughts you have, can you look into that for us?
Yeah.
and see if there's, you have the list, you know, Sally's given us all this stuff, and see, and Sally, that's not second guessing you, by the way. It's just to make sure that, you know, I know how you are. You welcome somebody else looking and seeing,
Definitely.
making sure that we're not missing anything. So if Dan, you know, scholarly background, has some ideas on this, it would be great. And
Did you really just use that term?
yeah, well, sorry. I'm just trying to buddy you up a little bit. And then, you know, and Grant can make a bit of outreach. I feel better. I would feel better that way, because then we can go to Steve, you know, why not, and say, you know, hey, look, friend, we've done our bit. We reached out to the state, we reached out to the national folks, and we've, you know, done everything we've tried to do, we can, to sort of put this in a bow. Are you happy? You know, are you content with this list? Because I think the most important thing is to, you know, approach the process. You know, I think it's in a way, again, my natural tendency is wanted to defer to his feelings about it, but I also think it would be disrespectful for us to just include people who we don't think should be there because it's convenient, you know. That I think the most respectful process is the most discriminating in the sense of carefully evaluating who should be on and who should be off. And I think Sally's done a really good job at that. So to me, that's the next step. Grant, do a little outreach. Dan, do a little digging. Let's reconvene this in November. And hopefully by then, you know, we have some, and we can, I think the thing is also to collate all this stuff and to send, and I can reach out to Mr. Wynot and just explain, you know, that we've been over this and we've really tried to give it some thought, and this is where we're at, and ask again if he has any input. So fair enough. Should we move on? Thank you so much. I'm sorry that took so long. I was really thrown off by those nuts at the beginning, but Sally, thank you for everything you're doing. I know we're all really appreciative. I certainly am. And you know, we'll keep working at this. And I'm going to also, by the way, reach out to Joe Gautier at Massar and just let him know where we're at, because that may be clarifying. I wanted to have this conversation first, but I'll reach out to him in the next week and see where we go. Sally, thank you so much. I'll let you go off to your happy evening.
Okay.
Right, Sally.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you, Sally.
Okay. Next item is I thought the 21 Highland Street roundtable last Wednesday was that Wednesday or Thursday? No, it was Wednesday. Was really
Wednesday.
great, actually. I felt, you know, as I said pretty much at the outset, I thought that this is what town government's supposed to be all about, is boards and committees that see something that they believe is in their purview, and get together and, you know, try to share some thoughts and ideas. And I don't think there's enough of that. So I'm appreciative of Dorian Jasinski for suggesting it and organizing the affair. From Shopsy, it was nice. I had never met Jen Hansen before, from REC, the chair of Recreation Commission, Freddie Gillespie, Open Space, and CPC and its chair, Ben Smith. It was good to sit, you know, with those four other boards. I know CPC didn't have a quorum, and I know Open Space didn't, but Shopsy, I believe Rec did, and we did. And it was good to see all those people in the same room and sit around and hear what they had to say. And I thought it was super productive. I wanted to, well, a couple things. First, I wanted to, because I did so much of the talking on our behalf, I really wanted to hear if you all had anything at this point to add. I would also say that, you know, at the conclusion of the meeting, the SHOPC chair was sort of talking about, well, when are we going to do this again? And, you know, kind of a next steps sort of thing. And I said, I wanted to talk to you. I will say that my own inclination is, I felt heard. Certainly, I believe Mr. Stivers was in the gallery, and of course, Al Hamilton from the select board, who's on SHOPC, was present. And I know listening very carefully. And I for one, feel heard at this point. And I think, you know, I think there's been a kind of reevaluation of maybe of initial positions on this. I think there's some things in the works that sound very promising. And I think the matter for me at this point is sort of squarely back in the court of the select board, where it belongs, by the way. And I know on their agenda for tomorrow night, the 24th, they have an item regarding the South Union School Study Committee. There was discussion about what the charge and the composition of that committee should be, but I feel pretty confident, unless something changes pretty radically, that historical was intended and is still intended to have a seat on that committee, which makes me happy, because I think, you know, we have a clear perspective to represent, and I think we do a good job representing it. And I tried to indicate when I spoke to the select board the last time they met, I think, and you know, at this roundtable meeting, what I thought our role in that would be to sort of educate people on what that building's history is and its value to the town, and also to attempt to bring forward, as I did last Wednesday night, examples of, you know, this is an issue, the old historic school buildings and what to do with them is something that's being grappled with by communities throughout the Commonwealth. And I tried to bring forward, you know, a handful of half dozen or so of examples of, you know, a successful reuse of these buildings. And so I thought that our role in any committee like that would be to try to, again, to bring forward example after example, and then to not let people forget that, you know, that, for instance, you know, that it was not only a school, but it was a branch library for the town for almost 40 years. You know, there was an airplane observation structure built on the top of it during World War II, that the building has already gone through one very extensive renovation in the early 50s. It took 4 years, you know, and that a building evolves over its life. And, you know, so I think that's the kind of viewpoint I think that we could profitably represent on such a committee. So if they do decide to constitute it tomorrow night, I hope we get a seat. But beyond that, and because of that, I don't particularly see a need for the group that met last Wednesday necessarily to meet again. I did voice the opinion, I think, seconding comments by other folks there, that I thought the composition of any kind of study group for the South Union School probably should include, for instance, planning. They kind of got nudged out, I think, in the last conversation, but that's up to the select board. I mean, I'm trying to stay in my lane and say, if historical has a seat, I'm going to be happy. And I don't particularly see the need for any further roundtable discussions at this point, because I think that study committee will have to do lots of outreach to other boards and committees, whoever is seated on it, and lots of outreach to the community. So that's my 2 cents. But Michelle, Dan, Annie, I know Grant, I think you had one thing to say, but you could say more. But I'm really curious, Michelle, Dan, and Annie, if you have anything you want to add on the subject. Or if not, not.
So
Go ahead.
I'll reiterate what I had said at the end of the meeting, which was we are coming up on the 300th anniversary? Is it no?
Yep.
Yeah.
Tricentennial.
Tricentennial, right? And a building that is still in use exists for 1/3 of that history, right? And it's still in use. It's still being heavily used by a pretty fantastic rec program. And this is not, and as I had said to you, I did not like the way the conversation was framed, which was Neary versus South Union, which is incredibly flawed thinking, because it disregards the history of South Union, the architecture of South Union, right? Everything that it was built and has done for the city to just be then thrown as surplus, right? I felt that to be incredibly frustrating, because the school itself has been reimagined so many times over the course of its history. And so I felt like some of the conversation was that lack of imagination. Neary has its own whole host of problems because of its, when it was built, how it was built. I would probably wager to say that Neary itself, in terms of a building inspection, would probably do poorer than South Union, just because of the way it was probably constructed and the need for its construction to be done quickly. So that's kind of where my perspective. Its location does not lend itself to senior housing because it's a location to Southborough Medical Center or Metro West or any of the close hospitals. And so I think, from my perspective, I think it should be, how do we maintain its use and enhance the use that it currently has, right? Rather than, right, there's plenty of property, right? We can do outdoor courts with that's up to the rec department of the town, but the land is there to be used to support the rec department, right? I think that's right. And as I had said, right, if there's other pieces to the building that is not being used or need to be restored inside, right, well, then that's where we can put archives and records. And we can move all of the, we can leave Southborough Library, and then take really the heavy duty collections of it and move those to South Union. Because the library expansion, if that's what they're really trying to talk about, is going to be a huge headache, considering all of the stuff that you unearthed, Kevin, and that the archaeological report unearthed as well. Because there's not the only place for the library to expand is back.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think there are a lot of possibilities for that school, and I think there are some good ideas that are going to be forthcoming. Um, but Michelle, anything?
Yes, Kevin, I think that you did a terrific job representing historic on this. And one of my favorite comments from you is the fact that the greenest building is the one that remains. And I think that that really should have driven home a different perspective, because I know that they talk about it being a money pit, the heating, the windows, the this and the that. Well, if you look at it, I mean, you can, just like your house, you just fix windows, and, the green building was really a good point. And I hope that that did hit home for some people.
Yeah, me too. And thanks. Annie?
Yeah, I will just echo what others have said, and I told you this on site as well. Just thanks as always for representing us so well, Kevin. You really have a way, a way with words and all of your research, and it was inspiring to me personally. And I trust that others in the room felt the same way. I felt that your presentation was extremely compelling. And how I was reading the room was that a lot of people agreed with our standpoint. And I felt the support for preserving the building, with all except for possibly one person. So I thought it was really, really positive to have everyone in the room talking about this matter. And I think it really showed kind of where a lot of the stakeholders fall for the fall in terms of moving forward. And I think it was really important that we had the opportunity to share share those feelings, as we haven't been a part of a lot of conversations to this point. So thank you again.
Thanks. And Grant, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was a really positive meeting. It was really great to hear the perspectives of all the other groups. I on CPC, I'd gotten a smattering of what a couple members of different commissions here and there had felt, but it was really nice to, like, I'll just be honest, I don't watch recreation committee meetings, so I didn't really know how they felt about it, and so it was that was really positive. I'll agree with Annie that I thought that there was broad consensus in the room, except for one person, that the building should be preserved. And in my comments the other night, and I've said this at a select board meeting previously, I do think that we went through a scare here, I think, really, in which suddenly there's this talk of demolition, and I think people, including us, kind of freaked out. And now I think it's there's been positive steps to form this committee and to kind of slow down and think about it, but I'm not entirely convinced that that urge to kind of get rid of the building, move on with it, kind of is not still there. So I wouldn't say that the issue is resolved necessarily, and I still think we have to be kind of on our guard. I will reiterate I had said previously that I think, especially now that we're all realizing the value of this building, and from what I could tell, that there is broad consensus in that room, and at least I think elsewhere in town, that this is a building worth saving, that we should pursue, or at least investigate pursuing, a preservation restriction on it. I think that you're allowed to pursue a preservation restriction even if it's town owned, and I think now is potentially a good time to do that once we've all kind of realized that this is something that we don't want to be lost. I don't really agree with the argument that we should wait 4 or 5 years to kind of go through this whole process again, about maybe talking about demolition again, and then having people freak out again to prevent that from happening. And I think it can also lead to solutions such as selling the building if that's what is needed, and also, having it be preserved across multiple owners. So I thought it was a positive. I thought it was a positive meeting. If for whatever reason other groups feel the need to meet again, I would be willing to go. I think that the historical voice is important, so I wouldn't want to exclude ourselves from being on another roundtable if others feel the need to meet. But hopefully people got the message from last Wednesday.
Yeah, I'd like to, like I said, I look forward to the select board meetings tomorrow night, and whatever decision they take with regard to the South Union School Study Committee. I'm very optimistic about what that committee could do, and our participation in it. And I do think that one of the things that we would be there for is to continue to discuss the possibility of a PR on the building, because I personally think that should be step one. In other words, determine that we're simply not going to entertain the idea, and that's with, by the way, an appreciation and understanding of people that take their perceived obligations as a fiscal watchdog for the town very seriously. I think part of my sales pitch is that you can do that and still make that building viable and make it live. So we'll see. Like I said, I think there are good things on the horizon with this. So I'm very appreciative of ShopC Rec, Open Space, and CPC for sitting down with us, and that we're all part of it. So stay tuned, I would say. I'm going to move on. Chair's report. The first item is I met with Bill Cundiff and Chris Leroy over at DPW last week to discuss the installation of our Southborough Center Historic District beautiful bronze National Register signage, and again marking the 7 entry points to the district. It's complicated, like everything else in town government, because placement, these are signs again that are 24 by 30 on, and they perch atop a pole that's 7 feet that nevertheless has to be buried several feet into the ground, and so on and so forth. And some of the locations present challenges. So the three of us, again, Bill Cundiff, Chris Leroy, and myself, sat down in Bill's office and went over this stuff. We were on Google Maps and discussing site conditions. And most of them were not that problematic. There's going to be one on School, challenge with a stone wall, Middle Road, that was an easy one. Main Street going eastbound by Fay, that was a little tricky. It involved a long discussion. One on Corderville Road northbound by the golf course, because the district begins with the rural cemetery on the opposite side of the road. That one was pretty easy to work out. We had a kind of challenge with two. One would be right near the newly relocated St. Mark's Street, where the park is slated to go, and Bill Cundiff would like to wait until the park has been completed, I think quite sensibly, before that one goes in, and I agree with that. It's a little tricky, and there's going to be a lot of heavy equipment and such moving around over there, so that made sense to me. The other one that was rather tricky was at the beginning of the district moving westbound on Main Street. The district begins right over the railroad tracks, at 1 Main Street, which is the Knights of Columbus hall. And it's a little bit tricky there because as you come right, first of all, right before that, there's a vacant lot. I believe that's owned by Peter Bemis at the corner of Main and Newton. You don't want it there. You want it where the district actually begins, which is over the tracks. Well, first thing over the tracks is the driveway for the Knights of Columbus. And there's a lot of snow that they push in there and can't have it there. Then you've got the new sidewalk, which is quite wide there. Mr. Cundiff doesn't want to go into that for sensible reasons, having to do with clearance and snow plows and the new sidewalk. So it makes sense to actually get that up just off the sidewalk into the grass in front of the KFC. That's private property there, though, and would require their approval, unlike the other locations, which are all public right of way. So I reached out to the Knights of Columbus just through their website. They have like a contact us thing because I don't know anybody, unfortunately, there. And I haven't received a reply yet. That's been about, I don't know, a week or so. So anybody have a contact at the Knights of Columbus? Dan? Grant? You both do? Yes?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Because let's talk. Because I need an in over there. I just want to, pitch it to them that this is going to be a nice thing to bring attention to. They're what I regard as very handsome and is unquestionably a very historic building. I think that building was built in 1807 or 6 or something like that. I think it'd be a very nice thing for them, very attractive and not obtrusive, wouldn't interfere with their operations in any way whatsoever, but I need a contact over there. But it was a useful discussion, and Chris Leroy was very helpful in terms of how we're actually going to set these posts so that these signs are quite expensive. So we want to make sure that they're done properly and securely and they last. And we've had extensive conversations about that over a couple months now. But I think we're close to being able to move forward. They would like me to go out, and I have the stakes in my trunk, and actually stake the exact locations we're looking to have them, having discussed this now. Because they have to contact DigSafe and all that kind of stuff. So Annie and I chatted about this. Annie, are you still willing to go out with me one day and drive some stakes in the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. And probably sooner rather than later before it gets
before it gets cold.
Too cold. Yeah, it's sooner than later.
So we're planning on that. I also, while I was there, had a discussion with Mr. Cundiff on this issue that we touched on, I believe, in our last meeting about some of the historic assets that have sort of disappeared in and around the town common. They included the 2 cast iron Common Street signs. As you recall, there was one at the east end down by the All Wars Memorial, and then one at the west end where Common Street rejoins Main. One of those was broken, the one at the west end. The other one was intact when the sidewalk project began. Those are about 100 years old a piece, and they're quite attractive. And they're listed in the Macris inventory of that area. And I was, concerned about restoration of one. He indicated that they had the broken one, Chris did, but that they weren't sure about the whereabouts of the other. Grant and I exchanged some message, and you indicated that Marguerite talked to Mr. Cundiff, and I think they have it now.
Let me just pull it up.
While he's looking, and I had raised this also because on the west side, right in front of the townhouse, Common Street is currently misnamed. I pointed this out, I think, in our last meeting. It says it's St. Mark's Street. Well, it's not. So, I'd like that that fixed. My understanding is that everybody in the select board knows about this, and Mr. Purple knows about this, and Mr. Cundiff knows about this, and it's going to get done. So great.
Yeah, so I had spoken to Marguerite Landry, and she said that the DPW has the intact old sign. So I'm not sure if that means they have both, but they at least have one. And that he, meaning Cundiff, would put it up in place of the present new one near the howitzer. So
Yeah, I hadn't heard that when we talked
that was today.
last week, but I'm delighted. I'm delighted if that's the case. So that's fantastic. The other items in that common street area were the boundary stone, which Mr. Leroy indicated that they have, which is great. That was outside 34 Main. Again, there's a Macris entry on this. It marked the end of the county road to Marlboro. That was its original function, and that had been, long story with this, had been hit with a snowplow in 1970 and broken off and then reset and moved when they were doing the sidewalk and the stone wall there by 1 Corderville. It got taken away and never put back. So there's that. They have it. The two other items were the James W. Burke Square sign, which sat down by the All Wars Memorial. That's one of these, again, I believe it might be aluminum or cast iron, for James W. Burke, who I told you the whole story with. He was a Southborough kid who ran off to try to enlist in the First World War and died in Halifax of disease before he could ship out, and the Canadian government still tends his grave in the rural cemetery. That marker needs to go back up. I don't believe that has been located yet, but they know about it. And then lastly, we discussed the deplorable state of the granite post and iron rod fencing that surrounds the town common. Chris had mentioned that in olden days, somebody from DPW would try to periodically sort of re-weld it, but it's past that at this point. It's in pretty bad shape, and the granite itself is fractured in many places. The posts are loose. I had said to you at the last meeting that looking at the spec documents for this work, it appeared that it was part of the scope of the work and had been paid for, and I couldn't understand why it had been done. Bill Cundiff clarified some of the notations on that documentation and indicated to me that it was only the responsibility of the contractor if they had touched it, moved it, removed it, or otherwise, messed with it, which Chris Leroy indicated clearly they did not during the work. So the bottom line on this is that there's no harm, no foul in any way on that fencing stuff. It's just an old dilapidated fence that needs to be fixed. And he said to me, you want to take this up, I'll help, with recommendations, resources, and whatnot to get it done. I already have my eye on a contractor in South Boston who does all the ironwork around the public garden in Boston, and it's quite good on this restoration stuff. But I think this is going to be one where we want to work with the select board, we want to work with DPW, and we might have to put in for CPC money or, find some dough, because this is one that's a big priority for me to get fixed and get looking good in advance of the tricentennial. So again, another item that the select board has in their agenda for tomorrow night, quite happily, is that I had mentioned that I discussed these matters with several members of the select board at length. And I also did walked the entire area, the common, and the old burial ground several weeks ago with Mr. Dennington, the select board chair. And I think there's very broad consensus that, you know, we've got some work to do down there, and a willingness and an inclination to do it, which I'm really thrilled about. And they do have on their agenda for tomorrow night, discussion of town center old burial ground cleanup plan. And the indication is that they're going to want our direct involvement and consult in getting these things done. So I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be more excited about it. This is, again, to me, how it's supposed to work. So it's great. And we're going to, man, oh man, we're going to do our damnedest to be helpful partners with our select board in terms of figuring out how we're going to restore stones, deal with the trees in the OBG, deal with that fence around the town common, get these signs restored, and give that whole area the treatment it deserves. So let's see, you know, I'm going to try to get there tomorrow night after I get off of work. I'm going to get there late, but I'm going to get there because I think we're on the cusp of something real good. So very good meeting again at DPW, and good things cooking with our friends on the select board. Next, Heritage Park update. I believe the select board may be moving on this as well. Well, of course, you know that the bid came in favorably. Has everybody heard this? It's good. It was on the blog. You know, it's good news. And there's some open questions about length of the stone wall and the composition of the stone wall and how it's going to actually be built. Is it going to be a mortared wall? Is it going to be a dry stack? Is it going to only go between the curb cuts 100 feet, or is it actually going to go the full perimeter? I'm not clear on what the answer to those questions is. But they did get a favorable bid, and expect, you know, they've signed the contract, as I understand it, to move forward. So that's great. I also understand that the select board may be moving on the name, and I did remind one member that the vote here was 5-0 in support of Southborough Heritage Park, and it was 5-1 on the working group in support of Southborough Heritage Park. So I'm optimistic on that. The third item, 5 Corderville Road demolition delay expiration. It expired October 5th. And I went in and, you know, had to indicate that our time, alas, with 5 Corderville Road is over. As I understand it, Kendall Holmes is moving forward through they have to go through the Board of Health and the building commissioner and whatnot, but that demolition is probably imminent. I know there was some tree removal the last day or so, I think, prepping the site. They have to redo the septic and whatnot. So that one's a done deal. As you know, we've been trying to get conversation update on the Burnett Garfield house at 84 Main for some time now. I emailed John Deli Priscoli inviting him to an upcoming meeting, and you know, I think he's aware that, you know, we have some questions, which is mostly an update and how is the progress on the building and the grounds, and one or two concerns. I had an answer actually from Michael Wyson on Mr. Deli Priscoli's behalf. indicating that they were willing to come talk to us. I had proposed a November date for a variety of reasons. So that's I expect that to happen in November. Two other things came out of this. One was that John and Jennifer Deli Priscoli extended an invitation to the Historical Commission through Michael for us to tour the building. And so we may have to do that in sort of 2 stages so we don't have quorum issues. But I'm also going to touch base with Jim Haggerty, our town clerk, to see if, as in a site visit, like we do site visits for demolition delays with a quorum, but the rule is you just can't talk about it. You can't discuss. So I don't know exactly what the rule would be with this. If we don't debate, if we don't discuss, if we don't, we just exchange pleasantries and Mr. Deli Priscoli and his wife give us a tour, we may be able to do that as a full group. So I need to look into that, and I will email people what the result of that conversation is. Also,
Kevin, why would that be different for this site visit as opposed to others?
I don't think it would be, but I just want to confirm. Jim Haggerty's been so great to me in terms of advice when I ever have a question about this stuff. Okay. I'll clear it with him first. And then I'll reach out to all of you with some sort of scheduling tool to see if we can get over there and have a look, which would be great. Also, my understanding is that Mr. Deli Priscoli and the Historical Society are planning some kind of event in December, a holiday type event that would be fundraising for the society. So that's a nice thing too. Members reports. Annie, we on the Historic House Signs program, I'll update first and say that subsequent to our last meeting, I got an email from Patty Burns Fiore, who has a graphic design background, and she made what I think Annie and I, because we discussed it, 2 excellent points about the historic house signs. One was the mock-up that we had said, like at the bottom, Southborough Historical, and then on the line below it, Commission. And Patty sent me, she had actually done her own version and had it as Southborough Historical Commission. Historical Commission.
The line break was different in the 2 versions.
Right.
Yeah.
And her version, I gotta tell you, was way better. Like it looked really way, and I'm like, how did we were all sitting here together, right? And none of us noticed it, And then the other thing she said was about the and it was like the size and the kerning of the C for Circa.
Which we were already addressing as part of part of Grant's feedback to kind of center that number figure anyway.
That's right. Yeah. So I responded to Patty. I said, well, we're already on the Circa thing because we got that one pretty well. But she was just dead right. I mean, it was so obvious that it should be Southborough Historical Commission, not Southborough Historical Commission. Can you guys follow that? Like it just, and her mock-up was
like a comma in the wrong place.
Yeah. It was so obvious. Kevin and I were like, how did we not see it? It's like, blatant right in front of you. But yeah, it was, Patty had some great feedback, and the sign had not started going into production yet, so I was able to get Signorama to update the final proof before they go into production. So that's good. So really my only other update, Kevin, is that I don't really have an update. it's still in production. I haven't, received it back from the sign company. It's been several weeks now, so I'm hoping that it's pretty soon. I actually didn't anticipate it would take this long, but then again, they had lots of patience with us as we were going through our iterations. So I'm trying to have some patience with them on the production side as well. But I'm anxious to get my hands on it, and I don't want to say I'm worried, but I don't know. I'm just very, very curious how it's going to look. And I'm anxious to see it live and in person.
Yeah, the other thing is, and you can remind them that this would be steady business. So,
Right,
hurry up.
hurry up, and it better not take, a month every time we have one.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, the hand painted signs actually took a couple months,
Right.
believe it or not. So, I think this time frame would be an improvement. But my update is that I really don't have an update. Have not received anything back from the sign company to date.
Well, the other part of it was that you did receive, I believe, Jim worked on this, some nifty black mounting screws that we stainless black painted mounting screws that we specially ordered, and that came wrong the first time, and then the vendor replaced the order, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you have those in hand, right?
Yes. Yep. I have them actually right here on my desk, ready to go.
Yeah, good. So if we can ever get the doggone signs, we've got the screws to put them in the walls, basically. So good news. Yeah, thank you. Michelle, oh, sorry, go ahead, Grant.
Oh no, just a quick thing. Could you remind me is there like a large backlog, because it's been a while since signs have been in production? Like, are there a lot of pending requests, or is it only
There's a handful. Kevin, what would you say? 3, 4, 5, maybe?
I don't have the list in front of me. There are at least 3.
3.
Okay.
I think 3, and then the one that's in production, so maybe 4 total. So not a huge backlog.
So we should be able to catch up quickly.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing where, once we say, okay, we like this format, we like the materials, we like, the style and everything, we could do 4 at once in the next round. It's not like we have to work on them one at a time. That's only for basically this one, because we're testing out a new material, a new vendor. But hopefully once we finalize that, we can take care of a big chunk all at once for the backlog.
Great, thanks.
How much are these signs?
Oh gosh, I think like $75, $80, something in that range. So our previous sign vendor, those were wood signs, hand painted by a gentleman, had not raised his prices in many years, and he was definitely undercharging us. So as we were exploring new vendors, Dan, finding someone that could do it in a similar price point was really important to us, so we could have the same support the same volume as we did with our past vendor.
And is this, these are, because I'm new, so these are privately owned homes, and they petitioned for a sign?
So we have a historical sign program where homeowners can apply or express interest in having one of these signs. I'm personally fairly new to the inner workings of the historical sign program. Kate Battles used to be the one to spearhead it from our commission until she moved on recently. But yep, so it's private homes. I suppose a commercial building would qualify. For example, my office building, the Lamy building, Chris Lamy has actually at some point had expressed interest in having one for his building. So it's privately owned, as a marker to display, the year build, and just some, pride of being a historic home in Southborough.
Yeah, I can, okay, I may, check in with some people at FAC.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What do we have for advertisement on that, Annie? Just to let people know that this is existing.
So it's on the historical commission part of the website. However, because we haven't had a vendor in, I want to say almost 2 years, we really haven't been proactively advertising it. You know, we don't want, you know, more people requesting it, you know, until we have a way to furnish their, you know, furnish their signs. You know, when the program was rolled out, I know it was on the blog, you know, my Southborough, and I think there was a, you know, small PR campaign, but I think we've really shied away from publicizing it for a couple years now, pending, you know, having a vendor that can, you know, consistently produce them for us.
Yeah, and when we get the sign, you know, when we get it and we like it, I will definitely reach out to Beth Balo and ask her to maybe do a little piece.
Yeah.
Resumption of the program, and that, you know, we're open for business and, you know, eager. I can tell you that Marcy and I are going to be paying customers as soon as this, because our house doesn't have one and it qualifies, and you know, we'd like to do it, but we've been stymied since I've been here because the program has been on hiatus. So
Well, it's perfect timing with the village district signs too.
right,
It really
right.
is.
Yeah, so maybe, you know, if we can get those signs up, then, you know, the blog does a story about that and mentions that the Historic House Signs program. So yeah, there's opportunity there.
One other thing I'd mention, so it's a bit different but related, is that I've been in other towns where and I think I mentioned this a while ago, but I've been in other towns where I've seen public assets that are like of extraordinary note, that also have like sign from the Historical Commission, which I find very interesting. So what comes to mind is on the Aspet River Rail Trail, there's a very cool old bridge from like the I think 1880s or 1860s or something like that, that's in use as a bike trail. And about halfway over the bridge, there's a sign that says Hudson Historical Commission, and then it gives even a description of how it was like a unique bridge, and it's the only bridge construction of its type in the world standing. And, you know, if there's anything like I know in Southborough, there's like the old trolley car remnants of where the trolley car went through town and stuff. It could be a project for us to consider if we want to, if there's anything extraordinary that we want to note or something.
I seem to remember from my time on CPC, the current CPC trail project had some sort of element that included historical signage.
Oh, okay.
To talk about, you know, some of the, at least the, some of the historic landmarks and assets that, you know, are part of that particular trail. And so I think I want to say Historical Society was working on that in partnership with the Trails Committee. I could be wrong, and maybe it's something that would be appropriate for us to get involved in. But I want to say the Historical Society is doing some work like that.
Yeah, Annie, I watched the same meeting. I know exactly what you're
Okay.
talking about. So I think there's, but Grant, the larger point about that is well taken. And it goes back to, do you remember, I believe I brought this up at the last meeting. It goes back to the conversation I had with Superintendent Condiff. You know, the business about the water tower in the rural cemetery, that stone tower, 2-story, currently has an asphalt roof, quite historic, built in 1903. And there was a windmill that pumped water up to a tank on the upper portion of it, and they used it to irrigate the old or the rural cemetery. And the conversation I had with Mr. Cundiff was with regard to the roof, because they need to replace it. It's 20 years shot, but it's just a 3-tab asphalt shingle roof. And I did some research on that, and I reached out to the folks at the society to see if they had any historic photos that would have shown what the original roof was. And we weren't able to turn up anything, but I did note to Bill that I thought the original roofing of that structure was quite likely either cedar shakes or possibly slate. I thought unlikely, but probably shakes. And that it was an interesting conversation about, you know, what could be done there to make that as really attractive as it originally, well, it is still beautiful. It's a beautiful structure. Again, listed in this actually the National Register, you know, in the inventory of the rural cemetery notes about the tower. And so, you know, but one of the things that came out of that was that I provided him with all the kind of historic information that, you know, for instance, it was built at a cost of $196.38, and, you know, all this kind of crazy stuff. And there was the windmill and the, you know, and so on and so forth. He didn't know that, but what I've found is that almost nobody in Southborough seems to know what that tower was. And so it occurred to me that I was over there looking at it with my wife just on Sunday, that I would love to see a small marker plaque. It could be put in that they have double doors, that thing has in the front of it, or maybe on a side on the stone that would mark that thing and say what it was, that it was a water tower, you know, built in 1903. I mean, it's a cool story, you know? So I think your point about there are opportunities throughout Southborough to kind of educate our populace, you know, in terms of the cool things that we have actually, that, you know, I was talking just the other day with a kind of longtime resident of the town who had no idea. I mentioned this thing and started to explain what it was. She had no idea what I was talking about, which I just thought, wow, you know, we got to do a better job. But so I'd actually, oh, Michelle, anything on pilot?
So as you know, we're still in the infancy of this committee. We have met a few times. The last one was October 11th. We actually have a spreadsheet going. So we've started contacting other towns in the state of Massachusetts to find out how they handle pilot payments from their private schools or universities. And we're starting to compile a list of that. We have gotten feedback. The next thing that we're doing is actually also creating another spreadsheet to find out exactly what, you know, this is gathered from the 3 ABCs in the town assessor's office to include all the properties owned by the schools and Harvard, to find out what their building use is and basically the assessment of those properties. You know, what we're going to do with this data is still yet to be determined, but that's basically where we're at.
I think actually, besides the sort of fiscal ramifications of all that research, I think some interesting things more directly relative to historical may come out of some of that research, so I'm looking forward to see what you all uncover in terms of the building's usage, you know, their evolution. We'll see.
It's definitely an interesting, it's an eye-opener, honestly, to find out how much property these schools actually own.
Yeah. All right. So now Grant has a CPC update, and this I expect, it's the way I sort of set it up in the agenda, will kind of roll us in. Maybe in talking about the CPC stuff, Grant, you could sort of get everything, like move us up to and end with and we'll roll into the larger conversation about 21 Boston Road.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So CPC had one meeting earlier this month. We were also at the roundtable, although we didn't have, we had a good amount of members there, but we didn't quite have a quorum. So I guess we didn't have a meeting then. So our last meeting was, we had invited many of the applicants who had put in CPC application or CPA applications to present to us. And so at that time, we had 3 applications with 3 applicants. So we invited them to come, and they gave presentations. So as you might remember, there is the golf course committee, which has an application to use CPA funds for a new irrigation system. So most of the golf course committee was there, as well as the New England Golf, the golf management company, I guess is what you would call it, who actually administers the day-to-day operations. So they were kind of talking about why they believe that a new irrigation system is warranted. We had the Kat McKee from the Trails Committee was there, who gave a great presentation on the Peninsula Trail and the CPA. There's a request for CPA funds to essentially finish connecting the Peninsula Trail that had already been started with previous funding in previous both CPA grants, I think 2020 or 2019 or 2021, sorry, can't remember the date, as well as some ARPA funds were used towards that. But essentially, I think they just underestimated the costs of some items, so they're requesting some more money just to kind of finish what had already been approved, or they'd already received money for. So that was that. I'll get to Boston Road at the end, as you said, Kevin. One other thing I would note is that even though we had 3 applications and presentations to the committee, I believe that there are more applications pending that we just haven't had time to, we haven't had a meeting to review. So this isn't official, but what I've heard is that there's an application from the Southwest Historical Society for in Fayetteville to have like a restoration of an old caboose or boxcar that could be used as like a public facing concession stand or something like that, as well as integrate that area into the Fayetteville Park across the street. So that's another thing that we'll be watching. I also heard that Recreation might be putting in an application for a dog park at Neary School, where the old landfill was, and now it's Lundblatt Field, I think. So they're which is not really in use right now, I believe. So they're looking to convert that to a dog park. And I heard rumors of a couple other applications that I don't really have many details on. So that's something that we might face in the next meeting or two, just to if we have other applications, then we'll go through that process as well. And then kind of moving into the next topic. So I had mentioned at a previous meeting that we received an application for 21 Boston Road, which Kevin helpfully sent out that was their packet. I think their CPC application is like a 1-page thing, which is the packet that Kevin sent has more information. And so Mr. Falcone, James Falcone, came before us and presented it. So it's a very historic building from, they don't know the exact date, sometime between 1855 and 1875, I believe. They're not sure of the exact date. It was previously used as a grist mill for, I believe, for Deerfoot Farms. I could be wrong about this, but I believe it had been located over by the Burnett House and had moved to this section of town to be close to the agricultural railroad is what, which is the railroad that's there currently. So that's a little bit of the history of its use as a mill, and then it became like a grain farm store. There were some great, I'm not sure, Kevin, if the photos that were in there, but there were some great photos of its use as a store back in the 30s, that kind of thing. And so it has pretty extensive damage from a couple of fires. It is in use currently as just office space for a portion of it, but our understanding is that the CPA funding, which I believe is about 800,000, is what they're requesting, would be to stabilize and be used to, on the external structure, just to make the building structurally sound. So that's what the application was for. It's not for internal renovations or anything like that. It's just for the external. And so the CPA's process nowadays for any historic preservation CPA funds, they require a preservation restriction be put on the building. So that's something to keep in mind. And additionally, the CPC likes to get approval from the different stakeholder committees. So as this is a historical project, in order for the CPC to move forward with it, they would want historical to review the application as well, I believe, and to, I guess, make some sort of determination. And so Mr. Falcone extended an offer to tour the building and I guess the site to the CPC, and I had asked that he invite historical as well, as I know that we would probably have an interest if it's going to come before us to see it in person. And so he said he would be amenable to that. So that's about it on my end. I don't know, Kevin, if you had other details to add.
Yeah, I should stipulate that this is not any kind of formal review whatsoever. I knew this was going on. Grant had, again, communicated it during our previous meeting. I have the packet. It's a 70, I sent it to you. It's a 77 pages. A lot of it's pictures, but it's a big, long packet. We have not, I haven't heard either from the applicant or from Ben Smith, the CPC chair, in any formal at all at this point about this. As I understand the process, CPC, that our review of this project at some point is going to be required. And so I appreciate Grant, putting in that we're going to want to, if it moves forward, at the time it arrives to us, that will, we certainly want to look at the building. But I did think it was a good idea because it is such a big project. It's a big dollar amount. They're asking $850,000 to $950,000 just to get, so that you could read this document and have some preliminary sense of what's going on. As Grant said, there's some uncertainty. The CB Salwin and Son, operated this mill and then a store, and then it was, as Grant indicated, built. They have the Macris report, the inventory form, and it's part of the Park Main Street Business District Macris report. It's not an individual listing for this structure. But yeah, the construction is somewhat uncertain. It appears to show on a map by 1870, but as Grant said, it may have been built shortly after the railroad came through in 1855. Heavily damaged by fire in 1950, right, Grant? And that the thrust of the request from Mr. Falcone is,
I think there was hurricane damage as well.
Yeah, quite likely. But that the thrust of the funding request involves the need for engineering and structural work to shore up this building. There's extensive, as you've read the report, there's extensive discussion about snow loads and the compromise. They photographs of the still visibly charred beams and whatnot. So this money, as I understand it, would not, for instance, result in some sort of turnkey operation. It would result in a stabilized building that then would have hopefully a life beyond that. And I think the conception, if I understood the report or the application correctly, was some kind of commercial venture in which a tenant would be obliged to build to suit, as they put it in the real estate business. So it's an interesting project. I don't know what you all thought of it. It's certainly a building that is historic and that has a tremendous history. There's a real story to be told, and I live very close to it, full disclosure. So there's a real story, and so does Michelle, that there's a real story to be told about the railroad, the dairy farming operations in the area, and the movement of foodstuffs on the agricultural railway east. So it's important story to the town. It certainly was a very important building. Personally, I think this is going to be tough because don't these correct me if I'm wrong, these have to go to town meeting, right?
Yes. Or you're talking about preservation restriction? Oh, just all CPA products. Yeah.
Yeah, the money.
Yeah. Yes.
Talking about the money right now. And I recall the St. Mark's bell tower, I believe that was a $500,000 passing by a single vote. And that was a lot more visible and, dare I say, sexy project. And that was a real squeaker. So I think proponents are going to have I think proponents.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
An uphill battle because it is it's a very interesting case, a very historic building, but privately owned in a private commercial operation. And one thing that stuck out to me in the report, I don't know if the rest of you noticed that, if I recall correctly, and unfortunately I don't have my finger on that part of the application, but I believe the Board of Health looked at this, and that currently, as the current conditions stand, a real delimiting factor is this capacity of the septic system there, which I believe was 160 gallons a day, which is, of course, nothing. And it's very wet over there. So I think that, I know there are grander conceptions about sewage treatment and whatnot in the downtown area, but as it stands, that's a real hurdle. So I just wanted to, I sent it to you so you could read it, so you could have an understanding of what may be coming along. And because we haven't been asked to evaluate it at this point, I don't really know that there's all that much to say, but I thought it was a good idea because this is a big one, and in my mind, a complicated one. In general, how you thought about it, it actually partakes a little bit of a kind of where you are philosophically on an expenditure of this sort. I think the applicant is quite smart to get in line. We have this pool of money there, and how you feel it ought to be spent is a very interesting conversation to be had. But if you had any thoughts you wanted to, or if you just want to take it under advisement at this point, because again, we haven't been asked to do anything yet.
I just want to comment that I loved reading through the application. I thought it was fascinating. And I thought Mr. Falcone did a really, really good job with the CPC application. Certainly I learned a lot, and I think it's undeniable that this building has, a great amount of history for Southborough. I am not necessarily convinced it is the best use of our CPC money. However, that's not my decision to make. That's fully up to the CPC committee. But I certainly don't want to lose the building. I think it has a lot of value for Southborough. So I think it's something that we need to keep a really close eye on, no matter where it goes with this particular application, because I certainly would hate it to be in jeopardy of not getting the necessary repairs, repairs and structural work needed, and be in jeopardy of not being able to function at all. So certainly I'm very interested in it, and grateful for the Falcones for putting forward this application to to get some eyes on such an important structure for town.
Michelle, did you have anything?
Actually, I have to be totally transparent. I've been away and I have not read through the report, so my apologies. I will do so as soon as possible.
Well, I'm sure. Of course, I know you're well aware of the building and very familiar with it.
One time, and I know that this is everything is just hearsay, that they were looking to make that into a pub. But I think one of the limiting factors, of course, is the septic.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's difficult to tell from the photographs. It doesn't. Did you tell me that there's some grindstone in the basement, or there may be some features that go back to the original use of the building, but I think it's been pretty well.
He did mention that yes, he did mention that there's an old millstone or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I thought you had told me that. But I think otherwise the building appears to be fairly hollowed out. It doesn't have, for instance, a lot of. I may be mistaken, but it doesn't appear to have a great deal of architectural features on the inside. On the outside, it's been, as the Macros report indicates, it's been altered. It lost, I think, in that fire, an L. I believe that was on the. I'm going to say it wrong. It was on one end of the building, and then there's the storefront that was 20th century edition. So there've been alterations and stuff, but the central brick part of the structure, I think, is fairly well intact. So it's a very interesting. I think, as I understand historical's role in this, it may be simply to confirm what's already pretty apparent, that this is a historic structure. I don't think there's any question about that. It becomes a question of community values and decision to be made at town meeting, whether or not this is a desirable expenditure of $800,000 or $900,000. So it remains to be seen kind of what we're asked to do. I think it's on its, like I said, on its face, it's a historic building. There's no question about that. Does it? And then
I'll just say I don't. Oh, sorry.
You froze up a second, Grant.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, I don't want to, state my opinions on the application just because I'd rather do that in CPC. Just wanted to note that, we're in the very preliminary stages of the process, so it might not, ever get to a town meeting or my understanding was that when we had 3 applications, that we had very limited bonding capacity, given previous bonds that are out from previous years, and that the requests for the first time, just those 3 requests, will have exceeded the amount of available funds for the first time in Southborough CPC's history. And then we've also are potentially receiving 3 or 4 more applications, it sounds like. So I just wanted to note that it is still in the preliminary stages, I would say.
Okay, yeah, no, that's helpful. Dan, any thought on this?
I mean, it's a fascinating structure, and kind of anchors that corner, so to speak. And I agree with you that, right, historical buildings they require investment. And what is and I understand that it's part of the application process, but I struggle sometimes with why does it need to be preserved? Or like, what is the goal of this? Because there's an intrinsic value to having these structures in existence. My caution is the only thing that really struck me when I went through it, and it is thorough and it is excellent. I would agree with Annie that Falcone did an amazing job with this. But that in the budget piece, and I know that this is CPC and it's not on us, but no mechanical, electrical, or plumbing work is included in the scope of services. So pretty much all of the money is being used to make the building structurally sound to be used. That said, if it's done, what an incredible opportunity.
Right.
Because there is so little left of agrarian Southborough. There are pockets of it.
Right.
There are pockets that are privately owned. We have areas like Chestnut Hill Farm that is now protected by the trustees. But to have a building like this, right, that is very much at the core of what Southborough was, I think is incredibly, what a great opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that whole story of what was there between the train station and there is an existing still dairy barn a stone's throw from there, and then the mill and the railroad. It's just a terrific story. So I think, if it comes to us, we'll certainly be able to say, yeah, this is definitely part of Southborough's history and a very interesting story. And then it's going to be a matter, I think, of community discussion, how deep they want to go for this. And,
because it links all of the farms to all of the urban populations that all of the farms were serving.
Right.
And that is such a, that's kind of that unique nexus point of, feeding communities, right? And so Southborough Farms weren't just feeding Southborough residents, they were feeding, huge communities in, once you get into the Boston surrounding areas as well as Worcester, right? And so, how do you sustain these large urban populations with towns like Southborough? And
Right.
that building is kind of what's really left of that connection.
Right. It would be nice, and this is again beyond our scope and our remit at this point, but it would be nice if the building, if there is a path forward to stabilize and reuse this building, if there could be some sort of component of it that would mark and honor that history, I'm not saying turn a part of it into a museum. I'm just saying that some way that if the building could, see another life going forward, if some of that story could be told in the coffee shop or whatever might end up there, it would be really fantastic. All right, well, thank you. I again, it's on our radar and we're thinking about it. To move forward, we've got the approved meeting minutes of September 13th. I've got a couple minor, they're wonderful minutes. I have a couple emendations. Okay, I might as well go first. Is that okay, Grant?
Yeah, let me just pull them up. Give me 1 sec.
Okay. And it's great that you've got the line numbering on, because that really helps.
Okay.
Ready? Line 64,
Yep.
I believe should be the Historical Commission and the Recreation Commission. Line 72, Mr. Gaultier's name is spelled Gauthier, not with a
Sorry, could you say that again?
Gauthier, not Gaultier. Gauthier.
Thank you.
Line
I'm taking
130.
a stab in the dark on that one.
Oh, I know. Line 113. It's golf course, not gold course, although one wishes it were the latter. Got it? On line 123,
Yeah.
although Jim indicated he signed off on these, Blaschke is misspelled. I think you inverted Blaschke.
Oh, thank you.
Line 123. Lines 129 and 131, the person who sent the Peter's school yearbook is Berling, Berling, not Burling.
Thank you.
That kind and generous fellow gets his name spelled right for posterity. On line 136, I'd cut the word but. And on line 139, I'd cut the word from.
Sorry, can you, my line numbers are off a bit from yours, I guess. So could you just read the phrase of the but?
Sure. Give me 1 second. And sorry, everybody. I'm just bringing this up. Okay, line 136. Oh, goodness. The structure currently has a serious roof problem. Mr. Cundiff asked if the HT had jurisdiction over the building. Next line. While it does not, comma, Mr. Miller. Yeah, you see the but, there should be no but there because you get the while. And then on line 139, why am I? Oh, there. Okay. I'm reading from line 138. Mr. Miller stated that while he is unsure exactly of what the original roof was constructed, comma. He thought that a roof of cedar shakes. So you just take the from out
Okay, yeah,
because you've got the of what, which is
okay.
Yeah.
Good to
That's
have
it.
good to have an English professor on staff.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any? No? All right. Well, then I will make a motion myself to approve the meeting minutes of September 13th, 2023 as amended.
Second?
Okay, roll call vote. Annie,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Miller's aye, 5-0 to approve the meeting minutes. Our next meeting, I would propose, because this is the tentative date I've floated by Mr. Deli Priscoli to try to get him in to review the PR in the Burnett Mansion, was Wednesday, November 29th. How does that work for you folks? That would be about 5 weeks.
That's good.
And by the way, that's the week after. I had to avoid the week of Thanksgiving, obviously, for people going hither and yon. Wednesday, the 29th. Does that work?
It does.
Yes.
How are you, Dan?
I mean, I don't have anything on my calendar right now.
Great. Fantastic. And I will just hope that Jim is good with that. But that seemed like, not before, not week of, week after. So I'm going to pencil that in. Wednesday, the 29th at 7 p.m. And because I've got agreement in principle, as they put it, for Mr. Deli Priscoli to attend that meeting. So any other business? I haven't got a thing.
Nope.
Thankfully. This has been a really long one. That first part took quite a while. Any public comment? Going once, going twice. No. Is there a motion to adjourn? I see Dan. That was a gesture to
Yeah,
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second?
All right. Motion made and seconded. A roll call vote. Annie Pfaff,
Yes.
Grant Farrington,
Hi.
Michelle Hokinson,
Yes.
a dangerous Dan Blanchard.
Yes.
Miller is aye. So that would be 5-0 to adjourn. Thank you so much for your time and patience. Until we meet again, and some of us will be in contact on various issues, signs, contacting MHC, and so on. Have a good night, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.